The bridge of the ISS Defiant shook violently as another blast hit their failing shields. Captain Alan Hayes gripped his command chair, his knuckles white. Red emergency lights flashed across the smoke-filled bridge. "Damage report," Hayes shouted over the blaring alarms. Lieutenant Samantha Ortiz tapped frantically at her console, her dark hair falling across her face. "Shields at 17%, Captain. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. We've lost the starboard weapons array." Hayes wiped blood from a cut above his eye. 3 Dravari warships had ambushed them as they patrolled the Epsilon sector. The Defiant was the only coalition ship left from their squadron of 5. "Engineering, what's our jump status?" Hayes called into the comm. Chief Engineer Devin Morris's voice crackled back, strained and exhausted. "FTL drive is charging, sir. 3 minutes to jump capability. If those shields hold that long." Hayes looked at the tactical display. The largest Dravari ship was positioning for another attack run. They wouldn't survive another direct hit. "All power to rear shields," Hayes ordered. "Helm, plot an evasive course through the asteroid field." The young helmsman, Ensign Peter Miller, looked back with wide eyes. "Sir, at our current speed, those asteroids could tear us apart." "And those Dravari weapons definitely will," Hayes replied firmly. "Do it." The Defiant lurched as Miller steered the damaged ship toward the dense field of spinning rocks. The massive vessel, nearly half a kilometer long, slipped between 2 asteroids with only meters to spare. Lieutenant Ortiz studied her readings, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Captain, I'm noticing something odd about the Dravari pursuit pattern." "This isn't the time for scientific curiosity, Lieutenant," Hayes said as the ship shuddered again. "No, sir, this is important," Ortiz insisted. "They're avoiding certain areas of the asteroid field completely, even though those paths would give them clear shots at us." Hayes glanced at the tactical display. She was right. The superior Dravari ships were taking longer routes when several shortcuts were available. "What does it mean?" he asked. Ortiz shook her head. "I don't know yet, but I'm recording everything." 2 minutes to jump capability, Morris reported from engineering. The largest Dravari warship fired again. The beam struck an asteroid near the Defiant, shattering it into thousands of deadly fragments that peppered the human ship's hull. "Shields at 9%, called out the tactical officer, Lieutenant John Warren. "One more hit like that and we're done." Hayes made a quick decision. "Helm, take us deeper into the field. Pack us in tight with the largest asteroids you can find." Miller looked terrified but obeyed. The massive ship groaned as it maneuvered between giant spinning rocks. Surprisingly, the Dravari ships held back. "They're not following us in," Ortiz noted. "This confirms my observation. They're avoiding these dense clusters completely." 1 minute to jump, Morris called. Hayes watched as the Dravari ships circled the edge of the asteroid field, firing occasionally but no longer in pursuit. "Whatever you've spotted, Lieutenant, make sure it's in your report. We need every advantage we can get." The Defiant limped through space for another tense minute before Morris finally announced, "Jump drive ready, Captain." "Get us out of here. Ensign Miller, jump to Rally Point Omega." The stars stretched and blurred as the Defiant escaped into faster-than-light travel, leaving the Dravari ships behind. 3 days later, Hayes stood in the main briefing room of Europa Base, the last major human military installation in the solar system. The room was filled with grim-faced officers. Admiral Patricia Winters, commander of Earth's Defense Fleet, stood at the front, her silver hair pulled back tightly. "The loss of Proxima Station means the Dravari now control all approaches to our solar system," Winters said, her voice steady despite the devastating news. "This is the 3rd major defeat in as many months." A holographic display showed the coalition territory shrinking as red Dravari-controlled areas expanded. 8 years of war and humanity along with their allies, the crystal-like Velrani and the insectoid Ketra, were losing badly. "Their shield technology remains impenetrable to our weapons," continued Admiral Winters, "and their numbers grow while ours dwindle." Captain Hayes studied the map. Earth was nearly surrounded. The coalition had begun with 27 species united against the Dravari Empire. Now only 3 remained fighting, the others either conquered or surrendered. "Admiral, Hayes said, standing to address the room. Lieutenant Ortiz from my ship has noticed some unusual Dravari behavior that might be worth investigating. All eyes turned to Samantha Ortiz, who nervously stood up next to Hayes. She activated her datapad, and the holographic display changed to show recordings from their recent escape. During our retreat through the Epsilon asteroid field, I noticed the Dravari ships consistently avoided certain areas, even when pursuing would have been tactically advantageous, she explained. At first I thought it was just caution, but the pattern was too consistent. She highlighted sections of the asteroid field. These areas have high concentrations of thorium and palladium ore. The Dravari avoided them completely. Admiral Winters frowned. We've known they have some mineral sensitivities, but nothing that would affect their ships. That's just it, Admiral, said a new voice. Dr. William Clark, the lead xenobiologist, stood up from the back of the room. The tall, thin scientist walked forward, his excitement visible despite the dire situation. Lieutenant Ortiz shared her observations with me yesterday. I think we've been looking at the Dravari all wrong. Clark plugged his own device into the holographic projector. An image of a Dravari appeared. A tall, gray-skinned being with multiple eye stalks and a complex exoskeleton. We've been studying dead Dravari for years, Clark explained. But Lieutenant Ortiz's observations match, something I've suspected. What if their ships aren't just vessels they pilot? What if they're extensions of the Dravari themselves? The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Explain, Admiral Winters demanded. The Dravari evolved in a high-radiation environment, Clark continued. Their bodies are highly conductive. I believe their ships aren't separate technology. They're biological extensions, directly connected to their nervous systems. Hayes leaned forward. And certain minerals disrupt this connection? Exactly, Clark nodded eagerly. If I'm right, their seemingly invincible shield technology isn't a force field like ours. It's something entirely different. Something we've never understood because we've been thinking about it from a human perspective. Admiral Winters paced slowly across the front of the room. If you're right, this could be the first real advantage we've had in this war. She turned to face Hayes and Ortiz. What are you proposing? Hayes took a deep breath. A capture mission, Admiral. We take a small, fast ship, lure a Dravari scout into an asteroid field rich with these minerals, and disable it. If we could capture a Dravari ship intact, Dr. Clark could test his theory, and we might finally understand how their technology works. Winters stared at Hayes for a long moment. That's an extremely high-risk operation, Captain. With respect, Admiral, Hayes replied. Losing this war is a certainty unless something changes. We need to take risks. The room was silent as Winters considered. Finally, she nodded. Assemble your team, Captain Hayes. You have my authorization. If there's even a small chance this could shift the balance, we have to try. As the meeting broke up, Ortiz approached Hayes quietly. Do you really think this could work, sir? Hayes watched as officers filed out of the room, many with defeated expressions. I don't know, Lieutenant, but humans have always been good at changing the rules when the game seems lost. He turned to her with determination in his eyes. And this game is far from over. The ISS Swift, a small stealth vessel, glided silently through the darkness of space. Captain Hayes stood behind the pilot's chair, watching the sensor readings with intense focus. His mission team was small, just 15 of his most trusted crew members from the Defiant. Any sign of Dravari patrols? Hayes asked. Lieutenant Commander Noah Garcia, head of Special Forces, checked the tactical display. Nothing yet, sir, but intelligence says they patrol this sector every 6 hours. We should see something soon. Hayes nodded and turned to Lieutenant Samantha Ortiz, who was monitoring a different set of readings. How's our mineral payload looking? Stable, Captain, Ortiz replied. The thorium and palladium samples are secured in the deployment pods. If Dr. Clark's theory is correct, they should disrupt Dravari systems when dispersed. Hayes walked to the back of the small bridge where Chief Engineer Devin Morris was making final adjustments to unusual-looking devices. Will they work? Hayes asked. Morris rubbed his tired eyes. In theory, if the Dravari ships are biologically connected to their pilots like Dr. Clark believes. These electromagnetic pulse generators should overload their neural interfaces without destroying the vessel. And if they don't work? Morris shrugged. Then we'll probably die, sir. Hayes patted the engineer on the shoulder. Your optimism is always refreshing, Morris. The communication system chimed. Dr. Elizabeth Palmer, their xenolinguistics specialist, called from her station. Captain, I've been analyzing Dravari communication patterns. If we broadcast on these frequencies, it might attract their attention without alerting their entire fleet. Good work, Doctor. Let's hope they take the bait. Hayes returned to the center of the bridge. Remember, people, this isn't a standard combat mission. We need that ship disabled but intact. If we destroy it, this was all for nothing. The bridge crew nodded silently. They all understood the stakes. Across 3 star systems, coalition forces were in retreat. Earth itself might be under direct attack within months. This desperate mission was possibly their last hope. Contact, Garcia suddenly called out. Dravari scout ship approaching from Sector 7. Hayes leaned forward. Just one? Yes, sir. Small class, probably carrying a crew of 10 to 15 Dravari. Hayes nodded. Perfect. Palmer, start broadcasting the distress signal on those frequencies you identified. Helm, take us toward the mineral-rich asteroid cluster, nice and slow, like we're damaged. The Swift began moving toward a dense field of asteroids, broadcasting a fake coalition distress signal. The Dravari scout changed course, moving to intercept. They've taken the bait, Garcia confirmed. Weapons charging on the Dravari vessel. Hold course, Hayes ordered. Let them think we're easy prey. The Swift limped deeper into the asteroid field. The Dravari ship followed, keeping its distance but clearly stalking them. They're being cautious, Ortiz noted. They know we led them into these asteroids deliberately. But their curiosity is stronger than their caution, Hayes replied. All they see is a damaged human ship. Their arrogance will make them overconfident. The Swift continued its seemingly random path through the asteroids, actually following a carefully planned route. The Dravari ship stayed just far enough back to avoid ambush, but close enough not to lose them. Ready mineral pods for deployment, Hayes ordered. Ready, sir, Ortiz confirmed. Hayes waited until they reached the center of the asteroid field, where the largest concentration of rocks would prevent the Dravari from making a quick escape. Deploy, he commanded. 6 small pods launched from the Swift, detonating near surrounding asteroids. Clouds of fine mineral dust dispersed into space around them. Dravari ship is increasing speed, Garcia reported. They're moving in for the kill before we can escape. Helm, cut engines, Hayes ordered. Make them think we're dead in space. The Swift drifted silently as the Dravari ship approached, entering the cloud of mineral particles. Their weapons are powering up to maximum, Garcia warned. Hold. Hayes said calmly. Wait until they're fully in the cloud. The Dravari ship moved closer, its sleek gray hull now visible through the bridge viewport. The mineral particles settled on its surface like dust. Now, Hayes shouted. Morris, activate the pulse. Chief Engineer Morris pressed a series of commands into his console. The electromagnetic pulse generators hummed to life, sending invisible waves of energy through the mineral cloud. The effect was immediate. The Dravari ship's lights flickered wildly. It began to drift, spinning slowly out of control. It's working, Ortiz exclaimed. Their systems are going haywire. Boarding team, prepare for deployment, Hayes ordered. Garcia, you have point. Lieutenant Commander Garcia nodded grimly. He and his team of 6 Marines were already in their spacesuits, weapons ready. We'll get it done, sir. The Swift moved alongside the disabled Dravari vessel. Garcia's team launched across the short distance between ships, magnetic boots securing them to the alien hull. Using specialized cutting tools, they created an entry point into the Dravari vessel. Hayes watched anxiously as the minutes ticked by. Finally, Garcia's voice came over the comm. We're in, Captain. Encountering light resistance. The Dravari appear disoriented. More minutes passed with sounds of fighting coming through the comm. Finally, Garcia spoke again. Ship secure. Sir, 5 Dravari dead, 3 unconscious but alive. You should see this place. It's like nothing we expected. Hold position. We're coming over, Hayes replied. He turned to Ortiz and Morris. You two, with me. Palmer, stay here and monitor communications. If any other Dravari ships appear, warn us immediately. Hayes, Ortiz, and Morris crossed to the alien vessel in their spacesuits. They entered through the breach Garcia's team had created and found themselves in a dimly lit corridor, unlike any ship they had seen before. The walls appeared almost organic, with pulsing veins of light running through them. The air was thick and humid, filled with an odd, sweet smell. It's not just a ship, Morris whispered in awe. It's almost alive. Garcia met them, his suit spattered with greenish Dravari blood. This way, Captain. You need to see the control room. They followed him through winding passages until they reached what should have been the bridge. Instead of the expected control panels and command chairs, they found pod-like structures where the Dravari had been connected to the ship through biological interfaces. Dr. Clark was right, Ortiz said, scanning the room with her equipment. The ship is an extension of their bodies. They don't pilot it, they become part of it. Private First Class Ryan Kelly, the youngest member of Garcia's team, stood nearby, studying one of the unconscious Dravari. Sir, I noticed something odd about their reactions when we boarded. They seemed more confused than afraid, even when we were attacking them. Hayes looked at the young Marine. What are you suggesting, Kelly? I think they don't understand what we're doing, Kelly replied. The way they fought, it wasn't like they were defending their ship. It was more like they were trying to understand what we wanted. Hayes considered this. Morris, what can you tell us about their technology? The engineer was already examining what appeared to be a control panel. It's incredible, sir. They don't use buttons or screens. Everything is neural. The ship responds to their thoughts. Can you operate it? Hayes asked. Morris shook his head. Not without plugging our brains into it. But I can study it. Maybe figure out how it works. Hayes nodded. You have 2 hours. Grab everything you can. Then we'll detach and destroy this vessel. Sir, Ortiz interrupted. We should take the whole ship back. This could be the breakthrough we need. Hayes looked at her. Too risky. We take what we can carry, plus one of the unconscious Dravari for Dr. Clark to study. That's all. As his team worked to gather data and samples, Hayes stared at the organic-looking walls of the alien ship. For the first time in years, he felt something he had almost forgotten: hope. The main laboratory at Europa Base hummed with activity. Scientists and military personnel moved quickly between workstations, examining the samples and data retrieved from the Dravari scout ship. At the center of this controlled chaos stood Dr. William Clark, bent over an examination table where an unconscious Dravari lay. Captain Hayes entered the lab, followed by Lieutenant Ortiz. They approached Dr. Clark, who looked up with excitement in his eyes. Captain, your mission was more successful than we could have hoped, Clark said. This specimen is providing invaluable insights. Hayes looked at the alien being. Its gray skin had a slight shine to it, and multiple eye stalks protruded from its head. The Dravari was connected to various monitoring devices. What have you learned? Hayes asked. Clark gestured to a large screen showing complex biological readings. The Dravari nervous system is unlike anything we've seen before. It extends beyond their physical bodies, designed to connect with their technology. Their ships aren't just vessels, they're literal extensions of themselves. That explains why they were so disoriented when we severed the connection, Ortiz noted. Exactly, Clark agreed. Imagine if someone suddenly cut off your arms and legs. That's what we did to them, from their perspective. A new voice joined the conversation, which gives us our first real advantage in this war. They turned to see Major Olivia Martinez, one of Earth's top military strategists. The tall, imposing woman walked toward them with purpose. Admiral Winters assigned me to develop new combat strategies based on your findings, Martinez explained. If the Dravari experience their ships as part of their bodies, we can use that against them. Hayes nodded. What do you have in mind, Major? Psychological warfare, Martinez replied. Humans have always excelled at that, even against other humans. Against an alien species that thinks completely differently? We could change the entire dynamic of this war. Across the lab, Chief Engineer Morris worked with Dr. Kevin Wright, the lead physicist, examining parts salvaged from the Dravari vessel. These aren't force fields as we understand them, Wright explained, pointing to a pulsing piece of technology. They're localized space-time distortions. The Dravari aren't blocking our weapons. They're shifting the space around their ships. So our weapons literally miss by microseconds. Morris scratched his head. So they're not where they appear to be? In a sense, Wright confirmed. It's why our targeting systems never work against them. We're aiming at where they appear to be, not where they actually are. Morris thought for a moment. Could we adjust our weapons to compensate for the distortion? Better than that, Wright said with a smile. We could mimic their technology, create our own space-time distortion fields. In another section of the lab, Dr. Elizabeth Palmer worked with Commander Diana Foster from Intelligence. They reviewed recordings of Dravari communications. Their language has no words for deception or subterfuge, Palmer explained. They communicate directly and literally. Foster nodded thoughtfully. That explains their battle tactics. They always come straight at us, never using feints or traps. They don't understand trickery, Palmer added. It's completely outside their comprehension. Foster smiled slowly. Then we need to be very, very tricky. Admiral Winters called an emergency meeting in the command center later that day. All the scientists and officers involved with the Dravari research gathered around a large table. I need solutions, people, Winters said firmly. The Dravari have taken Alpha Centauri. Earth is next on their list. Dr. Wright stood first. Admiral, we believe we can adapt the Dravari space-time technology to create a new defense system. It won't be as advanced as theirs, but it should give our ships better protection. How long? Winters asked. 3 weeks for a prototype, Wright replied. Maybe 2 months for fleet-wide implementation. We don't have 2 months, Winters said. Bluntly, Major Martinez spoke next. We don't need to wait for the technology, Admiral. We can implement new tactics immediately based on what we've learned about Dravari psychology. Explain, Winters ordered. Martinez activated the room's holographic display, showing battle simulations. The Dravari have no concept of deception. They fight directly, efficiently, but predictably. We need to fight unpredictably. Make moves that make no strategic sense to them. You want us to fight irrationally? Winters asked with raised eyebrows. From their perspective, yes, Martinez confirmed. Humans are masters of creative thinking and unpredictable behavior. It's time we use that. Captain Hayes watched the proposed battle plans unfold on the display. We'd still be outgunned, Major. Yes, but they won't know how to respond to our tactics, Martinez replied. While they're trying to understand what we're doing, we hit them where it hurts. Dr. Clark joined in. The Dravari we captured shows extreme sensitivity to certain frequencies of electromagnetic radiation. It disrupts their neural networks. We could use that to target their ship's biological components, Ortiz suggested. Ambassador Gregory Chen, the coalition diplomatic representative, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. Our allies will need convincing. The Velrani and Ketra have lost faith after so many defeats. Then we need to show them a victory, Hayes said firmly. Something to restore their confidence. Admiral Winters considered all the information. Her face was stern but determined. Captain Hayes, I'm assigning you a special mission. Take the Defiant, equipped with Dr. Wright's prototype technology when it's ready. Lieutenant Ortiz will develop the tactical approach with Major Martinez. Your objective will be to destroy a Dravari cruiser using these new insights. One ship against a cruiser? Hayes asked. You'll have the element of surprise, Winters replied. They won't expect an attack, especially from a single vessel. Most importantly, if you succeed, it will prove our new approach works. Hayes nodded. We won't let you down, Admiral. Over the next 3 weeks, Europa Base became a hive of frantic activity. Dr. Wright and his team worked around the clock to adapt the Dravari technology. Engineers modified the Defiant's weapon systems to emit specific electromagnetic frequencies that would disrupt Dravari neural connections. Major Martinez and Lieutenant Ortiz developed battle plans that would appear completely irrational to Dravari minds but actually served specific tactical purposes. The captured Dravari died after 2 weeks, but not before Dr. Clark learned crucial information about their biological vulnerabilities. Finally, the day of the mission arrived. Captain Hayes stood on the bridge of the Defiant looking at his crew. They were tired from weeks of preparation, but determination showed on every face. "Our target is the Dravari cruiser patrolling the Jupiter approach," Hayes announced. "Intelligence confirms it's alone. This is our chance to prove that humans can fight back." "The new shield modifications are online," Morris reported from engineering. "They're unstable, but they should work for short periods." Ortiz checked her tactical display. "Our approach vector is plotted. The Dravari won't expect us to come from inside Jupiter's radiation belt." Hayes took his seat in the command chair. "This is it, people. For the first time in this war, we're not running. We're not just surviving. We're taking the fight to them." The Defiant moved silently away from Europa base, heading toward the massive form of Jupiter. As they approached the giant planet's intense radiation belt, Hayes looked at the faces of his crew. If they failed today, Earth might not get another chance. "Humanity has always adapted," Hayes said quietly. "When the game looks unwinnable, we change the rules. Today, we shift the game." The Defiant entered Jupiter's radiation belt, disappearing from conventional sensors as they began their hunt for the Dravari cruiser. The Defiant moved silently through Jupiter's swirling radiation belts. The massive gas giant storms provided perfect cover as they approached their target. On the bridge, the crew worked with intense focus. "Dravari cruiser detected," Ortiz reported. "Range, 20,000 kilometers." Captain Hayes studied the tactical display. The enemy ship was 3 times larger than the Defiant, heavily armed and protected by the Dravari's advanced shielding technology. Before their recent discoveries, attacking such a vessel would have been suicide. "Are they detecting us?" Hayes asked. "Negative," Ortiz replied. "Jupiter's radiation is masking our approach just as we hoped." Hayes nodded. "Weapons status?" "EM disruptors charged and ready," Lieutenant Warren reported from Tactical. "Targeting systems recalibrated for the space-time distortion effect." Hayes took a deep breath. "Begin approach. Remember the plan. We need to appear irrational but be precise." The Defiant moved out from behind one of Jupiter's moons, deliberately exposing itself to the Dravari cruiser. Almost immediately, the enemy vessel changed course, moving to intercept. "They've spotted us," Ortiz confirmed. "They're powering weapons." "Hold course," Hayes ordered. "Let them think we've made a mistake." The Dravari cruiser fired its main weapons. Brilliant energy beams streaked toward the Defiant. "Now," Hayes commanded. "Morris, activate the shield modulation." In engineering, Chief Engineer Morris activated the experimental technology. The Defiant's shields shimmered and shifted, creating a localized distortion in space-time similar to what the Dravari used. The enemy's weapons fire passed through the space where the Defiant appeared to be, but missed the ship's actual position by meters. "It worked!" Ortiz exclaimed. "Direct hit avoided." Hayes leaned forward. "Phase 2, Helm, execute approach pattern Chaos 1. Ensign Miller entered the commands. The Defiant began a series of seemingly random maneuvers, accelerating and decelerating, unpredictably, making sharp turns when logic would dictate a straight approach. On the Dravari cruiser, the alien commanders struggled to understand the human tactics. Their battle computers calculated dozens of possible strategies but found no logical pattern to match the Defiant's movements. "They're confused," Ortiz reported, reading the enemy's erratic energy emissions. "Their targeting systems are constantly recalibrating, trying to predict our next move." "Good," Hayes said. "Prepare EM disruptors. Target their central hull section, where we believe their neural connections are strongest." The Defiant continued its chaotic approach, dodging occasional weapons fire from the increasingly frustrated Dravari ship. The enemy vessel tried to maintain distance, unable to predict whether the human ship planned to ram them, flee, or attack. "In range for EM disruption," Warren announced. "Fire," Hayes ordered. The Defiant's newly modified weapons released pulses of electromagnetic energy specifically tuned to interfere with Dravari neural networks. The invisible waves washed over the cruiser. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then the Dravari ship's movements became sluggish, its weapons fire uncoordinated. "It's working," Ortiz said excitedly. "Their ship-to-crew neural connections are disrupting." "Phase 3, Hayes commanded. "Ortiz, deploy the mineral payload." Ortiz launched specialized torpedoes that didn't carry explosives but instead dispersed clouds of thorium and palladium particles. The metallic dust surrounded the Dravari cruiser, settling on its hull. "Conventional weapons, full spread," Hayes ordered. "Target their propulsion system." The Defiant fired a barrage of missiles and energy weapons. For the first time in the war, human weapons struck true against Dravari shields. The cruiser shuddered as explosions rippled across its surface. "Their shields are failing," Warren reported. With disbelief in his voice, Hayes stood from his chair, his expression intense. "All power to weapons, finish them." The Defiant unleashed everything it had. Without their space-time distortion shields functioning properly, the Dravari cruiser took devastating damage. Explosions tore through its hull until finally, the massive ship broke apart in a spectacular series of blasts. Silence fell over the Defiant's bridge. For several seconds, no one spoke. They had just destroyed a Dravari capital ship, something no coalition vessel had accomplished in years. "Confirmed destruction," Hayes said quietly. "Confirmed, sir," Warren replied, his voice shaking slightly. "The Dravari cruiser has been completely destroyed." Hayes sat back in his chair. "Set course for Europa base, maximum speed. We need to report our success." News of the Defiant's victory spread rapidly through the coalition. On Europa base, Admiral Winters stood before representatives from the Velrani and Ketra, showing them footage of the battle. "One human ship destroyed, a Dravari cruiser," she explained. "Using strategies and technologies developed from our recent discoveries." The crystalline Velrani representative glinted in the light as it shifted position. "Impressive, but one victory does not win a war." "No," Winters agreed. "But it proves the Dravari can be defeated, and we now understand how." General Aaron Jackson, recently appointed to coordinate the new military strategy, stepped forward. "We're calling it Operation Blindside, a coordinated attack using tactics the Dravari cannot comprehend." He activated a holographic display showing battle plans across 3 star systems. "The Dravari think linearly. Their tactics are efficient but predictable. Humans think creatively, unpredictably. We'll teach our allies to do the same." The insectoid Ketra representative clicked its mandibles. "Our species has always valued order and logic in battle. You ask us to embrace chaos?" "Controlled chaos," Major Martinez corrected, joining the conversation. "Tactics that appear random to the enemy, but follow a pattern only we understand." In another part of the base, Dr. Julia Chen led a team working to develop new weapons based on their understanding of Dravari biology. "The disruption field generator is ready for mass production," she announced to Dr. Wright. "It creates a concentrated electromagnetic pulse that interferes specifically with Dravari neural networks." Wright nodded. "And I've completed the shield modulation technology. We can outfit the entire fleet within weeks." On a nearby testing range, Captain Marcus Lee, the test pilot for the first hybrid human Dravari fighter, climbed out of the cockpit after a successful flight. "It's incredible," he told the engineering team. "The neural interface is nothing like our traditional controls. It's like the ship knows what I want before I do." The human engineers had modified the captured Dravari technology, creating an interface that worked with human physiology. The prototype fighter combined Dravari space-time distortion technology with human weapons systems. 2 weeks later, a coalition battle group engaged a Dravari fleet at Tau Ceti. For the first time, the coalition ships didn't form orderly battle lines or follow standard tactical doctrines. Instead, they moved unpredictably, attacking from unexpected angles, retreating when the Dravari expected them to advance. The Dravari commanders couldn't adapt to the seemingly irrational behavior. Their formations broke as they tried to counter tactics that defied their understanding of warfare. When the battle ended, the coalition had destroyed 17 Dravari ships, while losing only 3 of their own. It was the first major victory. In 8 years of war, Admiral Winters received the news on Europa base. She smiled for the first time in months as she looked at the battle reports. "The tide is turning," she said to Captain Hayes, who stood nearby. "We've shifted the game." Hayes nodded. "The Dravari still outnumber us. They still have technological advantages, but they don't understand how humans think, and that might just win us this war." Across coalition space, ships began receiving upgrades with the new technology. Crews trained in the unpredictable tactics that confused the Dravari. After years of retreat and defeat, the coalition had found hope again. They were finally fighting back. 6 months after the Defiance victory at Jupiter, the war had changed dramatically. The coalition forces, once retreating across all fronts, now advanced steadily into Dravari space. Admiral Hayes, recently promoted from captain, stood on the bridge of the new flagship, ISS Horizon, watching as a fleet of 100 coalition vessels prepared to enter the Arcturus warp point, a strategic gateway to the Dravari home systems. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Commander Ortiz said from her station. She too had been promoted for her role in discovering the Dravari weakness. Hayes nodded. "Begin Operation Game Changer." The coalition fleet, a mix of human, Velrani, and Ketra vessels, moved toward the heavily defended warp point. Dravari sensors detected them immediately, and a defensive fleet twice their size moved to intercept. "The Dravari are forming a standard blocking formation," Lieutenant Rodriguez, the communications specialist, reported. "They're still trying to fight conventionally." Hayes smiled slightly. "They never learn. Deploy confusion protocols." Across the coalition fleet, ships activated special transmitters designed by Dr. Palmer. The devices broadcast directly into Dravari communication channels, sending contradictory orders and false information. The Dravari fleet's perfect formation began to waver as confusion spread among their commanders. "They're breaking formation," Ortiz reported. "Their ships are sending conflicting signals to each other." Hayes activated the fleet-wide communication. "All ships, execute Battle Plan Chaos Prime." The coalition vessels broke into seemingly random groups, attacking from multiple vectors in patterns that appeared completely illogical. Some ships retreated when they had the advantage. Others advanced when outnumbered. Fighter squadrons under Captain Lee flew impossible maneuvers, their hybrid human Dravari technology allowing them to slip through the enemy's defenses. The Dravari, unable to comprehend the coalition's tactics, struggled to respond effectively. Their rigid command structure, which had once been their strength, now became their greatest weakness. "Arcturus Junction is breaking," Ortiz announced, as the Dravari defenses crumbled. "We have a clear path to the warp point." Hayes took a deep breath. "All ships prepare for warp transit. We're taking this fight to the Dravari home systems." On Earth, President Laura Miller addressed an emergency session of the Coalition Council. Representatives from 22 species, including those who had previously surrendered to the Dravari, gathered to hear her speak. "Today our forces will enter Dravari space," President Miller announced. "But our goal is not destruction or conquest. We seek to end this war, not prolong it." The council chamber filled with murmurs of surprise and confusion. "For 8 years we fought defensively and lost," Miller continued. "Then we changed our approach, fighting unpredictably, and began to win. Now it's time to change the game completely." She activated a holographic display showing the coalition fleet entering Dravari territory. Admiral Hayes carries with him a peace proposal unlike any the Dravari have seen before. The Dravari believe in absolute victory or defeat. They have no concept of compromise or mutual benefit. We will introduce them to these concepts. The Velrani. Representative's crystalline form glinted as it spoke. "You believe the Dravari will accept peace when they are losing? Why not crush them completely?" "Because that would make us no better than them," Miller replied firmly. "Humans have fought countless wars among ourselves. We've learned that how you end a war determines how long the peace lasts." In Dravari space, the Coalition fleet emerged from the warp point to find minimal resistance. The unexpected offensive had caught the Dravari completely by surprise. Within days, they pushed deeper into enemy territory than anyone had thought possible. Admiral Hayes studied the tactical display on the horizon's bridge. They were approaching a Dravari colony world, heavily populated but lightly defended. Perfect target for the next phase, he said to Ortiz. Prepare the communication package Dr. Palmer and Dr. Clark developed. Instead of attacking the colony, the Horizon broadcast a message directly to the Dravari civilian population, bypassing their military channels. Dr. Palmer had worked for months with the data from their captured Dravari to create a communication that the aliens could understand. No response, Rodriguez reported after several minutes. Keep broadcasting, Hayes ordered. They're listening, even if they don't reply. Hours passed. Finally, the communications system chimed. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the surface, Rodriguez said with surprise in her voice. It's not from their military. It appears to be from their scientists. Hayes smiled. Put it through to Dr. Palmer's team. In the communication lab, Dr. Palmer and Dr. Clark worked frantically to understand the Dravari message. They're curious, Palmer reported to Hayes. Their scientists want to know how we think. They don't understand our tactics or our offer of peace. That's our opening, Hayes replied. Explain it to them. Over the next few days, an unusual dialogue developed between human scientists and their Dravari counterparts. For the first time, the two species began to understand each other. Meanwhile, the Dravari military leadership, confused by the humans' refusal to attack defenseless colonies, split into factions. Some wanted to continue fighting. Others wanted to understand the strange human behavior. 2 weeks into the offensive, President Miller arrived in Dravari space aboard a diplomatic vessel. Under heavy protection, she met with representatives from both Dravari factions in a historic first contact between human and Dravari leadership. We could destroy your worlds, Miller explained through Dr. Palmer's translation system, but we choose not to. We seek understanding, not annihilation. The concept was so foreign to the Dravari that they struggled to comprehend it. Their language had no words for mercy or compromise. If you are strong, you conquer, one Dravari leader stated. This is the way of existence. Humans have a different way, Miller replied. We believe the strongest choice is sometimes to not use your strength at all. Slowly, over many difficult meetings, a new understanding began to emerge. The Dravari military hardliners resisted, but the scientists and civilian leaders grew increasingly interested in human ideas. The final breakthrough came when Dr. Clark suggested a neural interface demonstration. With proper safeguards, he connected his mind briefly to a Dravari communication system, allowing the aliens to directly experience human thought patterns. The effect was profound. The Dravari finally understood that humans perceived reality fundamentally differently than they did. The war wasn't just between different species, but between different ways of thinking. 3 months after entering Dravari space, Admiral Hayes stood with President Miller as the peace agreement was finalized. It wasn't a surrender, but a genuine treaty between equals, something the Dravari had never experienced before. We've changed more than the course of the war, Miller said quietly to Hayes. We've changed their entire civilization. Hayes nodded. And they've changed us too. Our technology, our tactics, even our understanding of consciousness has evolved through this conflict. As the official signing began, Hayes thought back to that desperate escape in the Epsilon sector that had started everything. The humans had been losing badly then, outmatched in every conventional measure of military power. We didn't just shift the game, he realized. We created an entirely new one with different rules. Across human space, celebrations erupted as news of the peace treaty spread. After 8 years of brutal war and the brink of extinction, humanity had not only survived but had transformed an enemy into a potential ally. All because humans, when faced with an unwinnable game, simply refused to play by the established rules. Instead, they had shifted the game entirely.